Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Rich Steve Beck. A huge welcome to Produce, Mix, Fix and Conquer. So we have a fantastic guest joining us, my good friend and my new coach, Mr. Tony Jack the Bear Mantz. So just to give you a bit of background about Tony. So Tony has worked with bands such as Silverchair, the Neighbourhood, which sold in their millions. He's also worked with incredible bands such as Nick Cave as well. Tony's been in the industry for many decades now, working in the mastering game. He's also a fantastic music industry coach. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mr. Tony Jack the Bear Mantz. Hello, Tony. How you doing?
Hey, g'day, mate. How are you?
I'm really good. How are you?
I'm exceptionally well, and it's such a pleasure to be chatting with you, my friend. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Oh, thanks. Well, tell you, it's a little bit different maybe for you. So I know that you run your own channel on YouTube. So it's so good to be swapping it the other way around today and having a good chat with you. And you've been the guest. It's fantastic.
No, it is interesting to have the shoe on the other foot, and it's a good experience to be in the because I think as someone that does a podcast, when you can have a sense of empathy of what it's like for other people until you step in their shoes to be on that other side, you get to sort of get a feel for what it's like for a guest, and so you kind of know then, okay, how am I going to approach it? What questions will I ask? How will I go about doing it to make sure that my guest is comfortable and they're enjoying themselves while they're engaging, during the time of the podcast.
Absolutely agree. So, Tony, let's start at the beginning of your journey, as we've been doing with our other guests. So, you're probably aware we've had other guests such as Tim Palmer and Steve B, Mayor Applebaum, amongst many others. So, tell us about your journey. So I know that you started life off in Australia, and I know you've done a 360 and gone back to Australia. However, you've traveled around the world. So tell us your journey. So how did you start in the music world?
Well, I got into the industry really by fairly unorthodox means. Most of my contemporaries and peers back in the day, and we're talking late 70s, early 80s, we're doing internships. So the traditional model was you got into a studio, you were the T-boy, you swept floors, you were a runner. If you did your time there, then perhaps you would become an assistant engineer, so you'd be rolling up cables. You probably wouldn't be doing any engineering, but you may be setting the board, taking notes, then becoming a tape operator. It was a long process to becoming an engineer, and I pretty much bypassed all that. My internship, if you will, really was just becoming a studio whore, just knocking on doors and going into studios and spending a little bit of time here, a little bit of time there, and just getting a taste and a feel for lots of different studios and lots of different environments. And through learning that way, primarily through observation and a little bit of hands-on, but primarily through observation, just got to the point where when I had to come back here to Australia in 1991, I thought, you know what, I'm going to have a go at doing this myself and set up my own thing, using the knowledge that I'd accumulated over time, which interestingly contributed a lot to my imposter syndrome, which I carried for 90% of my career, because I always felt that I was never legitimate because I never went through that process that everyone else had gone through at the time. And so I spent so much of my career like just looking over my shoulder thinking, they're gonna fucking catch me any day now. I'm going to be found out, and I'm going to be exposed as being a charlatan and a fraud, and I'm going to be run out of town. But we soon knocked that on the head, albeit decades later. But we managed to knock it out of the system. But no, look, I as a kid, I loved music. I grew up. My earliest experiences were of music were listening to the radio and Even I still think I've got a photo somewhere when I was top 2 maybe, with a little ukulele in my hands. And
oh, wow.
music. So always loved music, always fascinated by music.
Yeah.
Didn't really as a kid it was like puppy love, but where I fell balls deep in love with it though was about probably 14 or 15. That's when I really got serious, and I wanted to meet mum, music's mum and dad, and go home and meet the parents, and and ask for a hand, So from there, I just became a very avid record collector, and I would be consuming all the, back in the day with vinyl, it was, a lot of credits, a lot of information. One of the things that's been sadly missed in the CD format, or certainly at least in terms of the format and the presentation of it. And I would just consume, with great ferocity, all the credits and become a real music boffin. And so I'd always be fascinated by, who the engineers were, who the producers were. And I thought, this is what I want to do. I want to learn how to make records. I'm fascinated with, how they make the sound go from one ear to the other. What's that about? I wanted to understand how the magic was created. And so I said, right, I'm going to do something in music, and something behind the scenes, because I didn't have, as you can see, I certainly didn't have the looks to be on the stage in front of a microphone, in front of screaming girls. And I definitely didn't have the musical chops. So I thought, okay, I'll have to do something but behind the scenes, out of sight. And so I said, right, I'm going to become a music producer, because all I really saw was producers and mix engineers. There was mastering was a credit that the only time I can remember seeing a mastering credit on a record was on a Sammy Hagar record. And it was mastered by a guy called Wally Trigo, rest in peace, at Capitol Records in LA, which now, of course, unfortunately is now become history as well. And that's the first and only time that I can recall seeing a mastering credit. So anyway, fold at the back of my mind. And so I decided, for me, in order to learn, I wanted to go overseas. That's where, because all the records I loved, the sounds that I was into were predominantly American and mainly New York, because it was always the same old New York studios that were coming up. So I thought, and this is with no disrespect to the engineers that were around Australia. Looking back on it now, the talent that we had in this country was absolutely phenomenal and world class, and pound for pound, as good as anyone else. But back in the time, Australia had and I don't think it exists as much these days, Rich, but certainly back in the 70s and 80s, Australia had what I call a real inferiority complex. We felt that Americans and the Brits and the Europeans did things way better than us. They were head and shoulders above us in all departments, and so we never rated ourselves and didn't think that we could, just punch on with. I think it's very different these days. If anything, I think we punch above our weight, and I think pound for pound, we can punch on with the best of the Americans, the Brits, the Europeans. I have absolutely no doubt about that. I still think we have a little way to go, but anyway, I'm digressing here.
No, it's cool.
So I wanted to go straight overseas, and left as a youngster with no money in my pocket. Just knocking on doors. Prior to going to America, I just wrote letters to people. There was no internet back then, so I just write letters, and occasionally I'd be able to get a phone call. I had a mate of mine back then who worked at what was known as Telecom. And for a bottle of scotch, which cost me $20 back then, this guy during his shift would do a little sneaky, cheeky connection because overseas calls back then were frightfully expensive. So for a bottle of scotch, he would hook me up with certain studios, and I'd be able to sit and chat to engineers and talk to my heroes, as it were. And the Americans were very much like, yeah, man, come over and visit anytime. We'd love to see, Americans, how they are. I don't think they expect him to actually rock up though, because when I turned up on their doors, it was like, holy shit. Right? And the one thing I was really grateful for is that as a you know, I was a kid, really. I was a kid. That a lot of these studios were just so impressed by the fact I was crazy enough to go over there with no money and
it's crazy. Yeah, completely.
That people look back and go, oh, you must have been very brave. I don't think it was bravery at all. I think it was just more naivety, you know, and the folly of youth. But nonetheless, so I'm rocking up at these doors, and these people are just absolutely like delighted to, you know, to see me, and surprised, and then genuinely delighted, and just I thought, wow, you're crazy, man. We like your kind, you know, and so all these people would take me under their wing, not knowing me from a bar of soap, and still now as a youngster, that's something that really impresses upon you, because as someone that works with a lot of kids, one thing I do know is, and one thing that is huge to a kid is when they feel that you believe in them. You know? When they know that you believe in them, that's the greatest thing you can do to a kid. And so that always stayed with me. Always. It still affects me to this day. You know, that feeling, I guess. It's like,
oh. Love that. So good, mate. So good.
And that's really and that's the inspiration towards wanting, you know, because I remember sitting in Howie Weinberg's studio once at Masterdisc and just looking at what was going on in the room and saying to myself, if I ever get to anywhere near this level or get my own studio, I'm going to make sure I'm going to do what all these other people done for me.
Yeah.
And so thankfully I've been able to honour that.
So I love that so much, mate. So I know that you know, we got in contact. So I was watching your YouTube videos, Mastering Music, Mastering Life, and you know, just accidentally, it just happened. It was on YouTube. You flagged up on YouTube, so I thought, you know, I'll check this guy out, see what it's all about. Watching your videos and the topics that you were covering, you know, I know that there's so many great mastering engineers out there, but your approach was completely different. And I know that I then got in contact with you when I was really fortunate for one of my artists to go into the country charts, you know, albeit, you know, she was only in there for a couple of days, but it was just fantastic just to see it happen. And I remember sending the track over to you. This was a few months ago, right? I think it maybe December time. And you said, you know, I don't know why, but, you know, I want to help you, and, you know, I'll help, you know, guide you and give you some direction on the track and see what you think. And, you know, you did a version yourself, sent it over to me so I could learn a bit as well. And you just did it. And to me, mate, it's just like you said, you know, it's like you're just putting your money where your mouth is. It's just so fantastic. So just publicly thank you for what you've done so far. And but another thing I love watching about you, mate, is your coaching. And maybe we'll talk about this maybe in a few minutes as well, about imposter syndrome and some of the stuff, you know, some of the shit that you've been through in your life, you know, to get you to where you are right now. And you know, from like you said, you know, I know we were chatting off air about where you were with like drugs and your health and all that sort of stuff as well. So your journey is just insane, but it's so inspiring. So maybe let's go back a little bit. So with your mastering, so you were with Rick as well. So tell us about that.
So my main mastering mentor, the guy who taught me how to cut a lacquer, his name is Rick Essig. He's the guy who I attribute most of the stuff that really matters in terms of mastering and how to run a session and the psychology of, you know, that's required to be successful in the relationship building game. Came from Rick. Of all the people I've met and I've learned from, there's one person who had the greatest impact on me. It's Rick Essig. Rick was working in a studio called Frankfurt Wayne. It's unfortunate that closed, like a lot of the big New York studios. It's moved on. And Frankfurt Wayne was known there as the Black Man Studio. It was primarily that was a place where, you know, lots of hip hop, lots of house, anything that was electronic and beat driven.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, and that's where guys like Tom Coyne, you know, rest in peace, started out his career before he went over to Sterling and became part owner there, and Herb Powers as well, who went on to form Powers of Sound. So I felt like I came, you know, it wasn't Abbey Road, it wasn't Metropolis, it wasn't Air, you know, but I still felt that it was a good pedigree to come through and to learn from someone like Rick with his wealth of experience. But I think the greatest lesson that I learned in America was the aspect that first and foremost, mastering is a service business. Yeah. You are a service industry, and that, you know, you're dealing in a thing called, you know, the relationship economy, and that the currency is trust. And so Rick always said to me, I remember he said, you know, 80% of this job is bullshit. To which I didn't understand what he meant. I turned around and I queried him. And he said, it's bullshit, man. It's about the hang time. Here in the States, it's about hang time. People got to like you. People got to know you. People got to trust you. People got to feel like, you know, you're invested in what they're doing. And, you know, yes, you need to be good. You need good chops. You need all the other ingredients. But what's going to get you further, you know, if you've got two guys, for example, one is, let's just say they're 100%. They've got perfect pitch. Their hearing is impeccable. They're technically infallible. But they can tend to be a little bit difficult to work with. They're not going to go as far as someone who's, say, 90% of the skill and technical presence, but the people love him and they want to be around him and they feel comfortable and they feel like, you know, I'm in good hands here. Yeah. You can, that 10% is not going to matter so much, you know, and that's the difference today. And that's one thing I tell kids is that, you know, kids are living in the greatest time at the moment in history to get involved in music and set up their own studio. For one, you got this thing that we're on now, the internet, and accessibility, availability, affordability of technology. You've got forums, you've got, you know, all these, you know, communities online like what you've created here, where people can get together and talk. You know, you don't need to have people in your town. You can be anywhere in the world and you've got access to it. And you can learn all this stuff. You know, it's absolutely incredible what can be done. You know, I wish, I think to myself, shit, if I'd started today in this current market, I'd kill it. I'd absolutely kill it. I really do. And I'm not coming from a place of arrogance here, Rich. I'm just saying. Yeah,
sure. I get what you're saying. Yeah.
If people just, you know, kids think, oh, there's a saturation, there's too many people. Don't be afraid of that, because what's going to set you apart? And the point I'm trying to make here is what's going to set you apart today is not if you got a Manly Verimune in your rack or if you got a full complement of, you know, whatever plugins. It's going to be the care factor you give clients. Right? And that doesn't mean being a doormat. It doesn't mean, you know, bending over and taking it and being used and abused and chewed up and spat out. Yeah. You know, it means that, you know, you're going to do that little bit of extra for the client. And by that, I mean, I'll give you an example. Okay. This is something that I do. And this is a great tip for you kids to and can I just say before anything else, don't believe anything I have to say. You don't have to believe. All I'm going to ask people is just to consider what I'm offering. Okay. Yep. Test drive it yourself and see if it works for you. Okay. So this is not anything I'm sharing here today is not coming from I know better or because I'm experienced. I'm just going to put things on the table that I'm going to ask people, should they feel so inclined, and if they're open to it, consider it. Okay. Sure. So one of the things I find is really helpful as a mastering person, okay, is that when people call up and say, well, how much do you charge? Which is, of course, people will need to know how much you're charging. People got budgets. They want to know what they're spending. Before I go into that, because what people tend to do is go, well, you know, I charge X amount of pounds or dollars per track, and they just send it off. Rather than just do that, take the time to find out more about the client. Ask them questions. For example, tell me a little bit more about your band. Tell me more about your project. Where did you record it? Who did you work with? What kind of music is it? I'd like to have a listen to it. I'd like to see. In my case, my typical thing is, first things first. You know, would you be able to send the mix? I'd like to have a listen to see how they sit, and see how they would perform in a mastering scenario. Perhaps if you're open to it, if there's anything there that I can't adequately sort out, and you're open to some constructive input to help you along. So it's about giving value to people. It's about, so that's one of the things you could do as a point of difference. And most people who are just, most of my clients are independent, self-financed, roll their own mixes at home. 9 times out of 10, conservatively, people go, oh, wow, thanks, that's awesome. Would love that, because a lot of the feedback I get usually is, oh, people don't say that. People don't offer that. They just kind of, here's the price, here's what I do. Off you go, and if you want to get back, get back to me. So love for the client. I can't.
So good. You're absolutely right in what you're saying, and I can't really add much more to what you're saying just there, Tony, because I suppose any job that you do, like you said, even in the mastering game or the mixing game, whatever you do for a living, if you care for your clients, and if you want to get to know your clients and find out about them rather than just seeing them as a number, like you're saying, just going, oh, right, okay, well, that's client 1, client 2, client 3, see you later. But instead you're there going, client 1, what are they about? What's their song about? What drives them? What's their passion? What's their history? And then, like you say, then you can learn as well at the same time. It's like, even no matter what age you are, and I think you've said this to me before as well, that it doesn't matter what age you are, we're all still students. We're still learning. We're still learning about everything as we go along, and whatever your craft is, and this is one of the things about this community, about Produce, Mix, Fix and Conquer, that we're all here to look after one another. So whether you're a beginner, an intermediate, or a pro, it's basically saying, let's all just hang out, let's all learn from one another. I've seen Grammy winners look at someone that's a beginner on the community and have been honest and said, look, I'm a beginner. And they said, oh, I've just tried this. And the Grammy winner has gone, hold on, I've not thought to do that. I'll give that a go. So that people learning from one another, just human beings, human beings are where it's at. So let's, maybe that leads us on nicely to imposter syndrome. So let's maybe have a chat about that as well. So you've been teaching me recently about imposter syndrome and about treating everyone as equal. So tell us more about your stance on that.
Well, as I said to you, Rich, for 90% of my career, I felt that I was an imposter. That, again, because of the fact I didn't go through the traditional, typical model that most of my peers. Also, because the other thing, I'm not technical at all. I approach things from a field perspective. Of course, I have the fundamental understandings technically of the job and what things do and how they operate, but I'm not technical. I'm not like a Bob Katz. I know you're having on your show next week, by the way.
Yeah, can't wait. Honored.
You're gonna love Bob. Bob was one of those. Bob was one of those guys who. Bob was. I had Bob on my podcast a few weeks. It was the first and only time I cried on a podcast because I was thanking him at the end because I was so grateful. Bob didn't know me and took me into his home. Bob took me into his home for 3 days in Orlando and gave me the most intense mastering boot camp I'd ever experienced.
Love that.
It was absolutely it was so frightening. Yeah, and yet it was really amazing at the same time in terms of what he taught me. In 3 days I felt like I had 3 years of experience packed in, and he was extraordinarily generous with his time and showing his technique and whatnot. But anyway, we're getting off track here. So I still felt that I was an imposter, and it was through therapy. That helped me through that, because it's not only the imposter syndrome, but when you combine imposter syndrome with a low self-esteem, that makes it even worse. Because here's the drill: people will say to you, "Oh, you're so good at what you do, and you're talented, and whatever." But if you don't feel worthy of that, accepting that, then that just compounds that feeling because you still feel like a piece of shit. And so you won't take it on. You refuse to take it on. And in fact, you can even get your back up and call people out and say, well, of course you're going to say that because you're my friend, or you're a mate, or you're my wife, or what have you. Of course you're going to say that. What else are you going to say?
Yeah, absolutely.
And come up with all this kind of stuff, But really, the thing that helped me unlock that was when this guy's name was Carlos. Who I was seeing over a period of a couple of years. And he said to me, look, I just want you to follow me here, and let's just put the bullshit aside for a moment and just think about this. He said, if people come to you and they spend money for you to do the work, and if they come back again to spend the money, do you really think that that's stupid? Do you really feel that you're that important in life that people are just going to hold you up as a charity, or they're going to just, feel something about you that they're just going to support you that way? Well, what makes you so special to think that? And that really hit me. That really sort of, made me go, wow, he's got a point. He makes it really, as much as I didn't want to take it on, but deep down I knew that he made a point. And that was it. And that was where I made the U-turn from going from imposter syndrome to now. Having said that, that didn't give me license to start feeling arrogant.
Yeah.
But because I still think, it's important that you maintain a level of humility and a level of understanding of, of perspective and knowing where you're at in the food chain.
100%,
But as far as feeling like an imposter, that just eroded, and over time, so I don't feel like an imposter anymore. And when I wrote a blog about it, maybe a good 3 years ago now, close to 3 years ago, the amount of private messages I got from engineers.
I'm shocked.
Okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
Who said to me, "Thank you so much for writing that. You just got no idea." And to be honest with you, I still feel that way. Yeah. So it just blew me away that how much that existed. Now, I know among artists and creators, because we're very sensitive creatures, we're sensitive souls, we're the most self-critical, we're the most self-doubting. I get that, but to find out that existed and at such a breadth and depth of the community, wow, But again, that a lot of that comes down to a self-esteem thing, So this is why it's so important, mate, that we work on that. I drill it in so much to people that working on your self-esteem is everything. Reclaiming your self-esteem, and the only person that can do it is you.
Yeah.
Everyone can tell you and support you and love you and mollycoddle you and whatever, but until you're ready to take it on and go, hey, there's nothing really wrong with me, I'm fine, and you can learn to self-love or self-accept, if you want to use that language, and just be okay in your own skin and knowing that you're human and you're fallible and you have your shortcomings, and that's okay. You're going to fall down every now and again. You're going to fuck up, and that's all. That's all part of the human experience, and it's okay. It's okay. You're not going to be defined by those things. But you see, we tend to do that a lot. We define ourselves more by our failures, not understanding that the failures are the learning opportunities. The down periods are where the growth happens. But again, the way I see my life right now, mate, is that I honestly, hand on heart, can tell you that I look back on things now, and rather than think of myself as a shit person or a failure or no good, is I go, wow, as much as I would have preferred not to go through drug addiction and depression and anxiety and feeling like a shit dad and all that stuff, I go, wow, that's where the seeds were planted for me to become a stronger, better person, which now enables me to do what I do today and to do it from a place of authenticity. So I can talk to people who've been through that stuff and be able to serve them by being able to share my own story and say, look, I'm not saying I'm great shakes, but I've walked in your shoes. I've managed to come through here. I'm doing a lot better than I did. So here's an example of someone that can show you that you can do it. And this is the path I took. It may not necessarily be your path, but it's a path. and I'll share it with you. Now, if you decide you want to go down that path or similar path, try it, because if you keep doing what you've done, you'll always get what you got, right? You'll keep
absolutely
in a loop. So at some point, you got to try something different, and it may not work the first time, may not work the second time, but you got to keep trying different things until you find the thing that works and rings true for you. But it's got to come for you, mate. All the therapy, all the people, all your friends, all the support, all the girlfriends, all your followers, all of that really doesn't mean shit. You know, their input, no matter how wonderful it is, until you're ready to open the doors to take it all in. Okay, so that's got to happen first. You got to open the doors and let it in first. Otherwise, it's just going to keep going past you.
You're absolutely right. So it's so refreshing as well that you're saying that, because to me, I'm, you know this already, but I'm a dad. You know, it scares the shit out of me to think about my son as well, to think that, you know, what sort of world is he going to be walking into, and how can we, you know, all the fuck ups that I made in my life, how can I, you know, you can't shield people from those fuck ups, though, can you? Because that everyone's got their own mind, haven't they? You can't control what goes off in someone else's mind. You just basically just have to, like we're having a chat and going, right, well, I've done this thing, you know, and this is where I went wrong, and this is then where I went right, and learn from, you know, my mistakes and my winnings as well, or that my wins, sorry, should I say, and you know, take it on board if you want to or not. It's completely your call, and I love that, because that's what the internet, if you agree, that's what the internet gives us. It gives us this community to share with one another, to, you know, and you know, it's, I'm very influenced by you, Tony, because you are very, as we've got to know each other over the last few weeks, you've come across to me as a very open human being, and I am very open as well, the way that I am as well, and I just, you know, there's no bullshit with me either, and it's so important that more people are just like that just open up to one another. I've even seen it on the community, right, where people have actually said, I think we had something about imposter syndrome. Then all of a sudden, there was a couple of guys, I won't name names, it was a couple of guys that started having a conversation about mental health and all the shit that they've been through, you know? And they're going, fuck me, this is a music community, man. And so I'm there going, good grief, it's like kind of, yeah, but then you're right, like how you said, like all these pros that were coming to you and going, you know what, I've had imposter syndrome and I've been through all this sort of stuff. It's so refreshing, because we need to be having this conversation. And like you said, you know, 20, 30 years ago, people weren't having this conversation. The fact that we can now, the fact that we can have this conversation is fantastic. But I know that, tell us, if you don't mind me talking about it, mate, you know, that I know a lot of guys and girls struggle with their weight over time. And, you know, you've worked so hard, man, just to get where you are now. So tell us about how you keep yourself in shape and what you've been through with your weight and all that sort of stuff.
Well, I grew up as a fairly solid kid, and then I went through puberty, and I got lean, and I was bullied as a kid at school. And I remember when I was 13, my dad, who just got sick and tired of me coming out and complaining, you know, Dad was one of those hard-nosed, you know, Foreign Legion guy, tough, you know, tough as nails, just no nonsense fellow. And said, fuck this, basically. Took me down to see his mates at Kevin Dwyer's gym and threw him into a lion's den full of thugs, just basically, and where my transformation went from becoming bullied into a bully. But I got fit. I got really, really fit.
Yeah.
And that carried on in my 20s. And basically it all started going downhill when I got married. Now, this is on the public record, but when I got married, unlike most people that marry for love because they fall in love, I got married as what I thought was my last roll of the dice to get my dad's approval, because most of the issues I've had in my life always stem back to my dad's approval, dad's love, dad's approval, dad's acceptance, which never came because he had other expectations for me, which were in academia. My dad was meant to be an academic. He was a smart guy. The whole all his siblings were all, one of his cousins, for example, was very high up at NASA, was very involved with the shuttle program. So there's a lot of smarts going on that side. And he was all juiced up to become a surgeon. Anyway, life got in the way. Didn't manage to do his degree. Went off into the Legion, and never got to pursue his academic destiny, if you will. And so he thought, okay, well, if I didn't do it, then my kids will do it. I have a son. My son will do it for me, and so Dad lived vicariously through me. Had an opportunity to do law. Didn't take it up. As a result, my dad didn't speak to me for 7 years.
Really? Wow.
No, because he felt it bored. You understand, my dad came from a different generation, and he's, at the time, I didn't realize that. I see it now, So I've learned to forgive my dad, give him a break. And it's like, you can only operate from your level of awareness and consciousness. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's where he was at the time. As a father myself, I realized you don't treat your kids badly willingly. I mean, at least most reasonable-minded, parents. You can only do the best with what you got. And I'm sure that wasn't great for my dad growing up. Yeah. And so anyhow, I thought getting married would be the way, I thought marry a nice girl, get a mortgage, because my dad always used to say, all my friends tell me how their sons went to university and they've done this, they've done that. What do I tell them? What do I tell them about you? What do you do? Listening to music is not a job. That's a hobby. I feel ashamed. I just don't know what to say to them, So these sort of things really, as a youngster, really weigh on you, very heavily. And so I thought if I got married, then that would, and of course it didn't work out that way because he didn't necessarily approve of who I got married to. Then I thought having kids might help grandkids. That'll fucking do it. Nope, not necessarily.
Oh, what?
And so I thought, okay, my life is fucked. I've made my bed. I've got to lie in it. I've shat on the linen. I'm going to roll in this for the rest of my life. And so I started just, giving up on everything and started using, cocaine excessively and eating excessively and drinking excessively. And so it wasn't until a point when I was about 48. This is me at 170 kilos, sitting in the doctor office. So I don't know what that translates to stones for you in the UK.
Big.
Fucking obese. That's what I would say. And so this doctor, who had a black sense of humor, actually, he said, Jesus Christ, he said, you got the worst blood. In fact, he thought there's something wrong with the blood work and ordered a second set because he just couldn't believe how shit it was. And they came back identical. And he just sat me down and he said, look, you could walk out of here and drop dead of a heart attack. And he said, you might even get the quinella and have a stroke. You could probably have a stroke and a heart attack. But you're not going to see 50. You won't see your kids grow up. And that was a real pivotal moment for me. It was like, so as I started releasing weight and getting on with it and getting my shit together in life, the last thing I had to overcome was my marriage because I was seeing a woman called Erica, beautiful lady who helped me through my initial, transformation, and she didn't tell me to get out of my marriage, but she sort of said to me, look, you got to really ask yourself, are you living your truth being in this situation? And it really challenged me to go, wow, what am I doing here? I'm bullshitting myself. I can't keep living my life in accordance with trying to get my dad's approval because that was never going to come. And so I went through the process of, separating, which was, it was a difficult thing to do because, essentially I broke my ex-wife's heart. Think about it. You're getting married to someone who believes in the marriage, who believes you're in love with them. To be told, I love you, but I was never in love with you. It's a very, very, for anyone to hear that, but especially a woman, like, talk about fucking putting a chainsaw through their heart. But so anyway, but getting back on track to what I did is I started off by looking through Tim Ferriss's The 4 Hour Body. then I started adopting a lot of his stuff about the low carb diet, and so I started doing that. But interestingly, what I found, Rich, is that as soon as I separated and let go of my ex-wife, I believe there's a lot of emotion that's trapped in the cells of people, and I found that my weight was dropping off at such a rapid rate. People thought I was sick, and I wasn't sick. I was happy. I was like, it's just so relieved to be out of this marriage and to be getting on track and getting my health on track. And so basically it was just doing a lot of cardio initially. Then I went to the gym, did weights, and the last, 2 bit years I've been, doing some jiu-jitsu. I've done various martial arts throughout my life.
Oh, man, that's cool. That's so good.
So I just want to represent Omega.
Yeah, do it.
There, who also sponsor my podcast.
Cool.
And so now, I'm nearly 58. And I'm not saying that I'm an elite athlete or some fucking specimen, but I think for my age I do really well. And I do 3 days of weights in the gym with my trainer Matt McLean. Shout out to Matt.
That's great.
And 2 days at Omega, and that's my 5 days of being active and moving my body and doing, and especially, our work is so sedentary. You know what I mean? We spend so much time, especially guys in mix. As a mastering guy, you don't tend to spend hours upon it, or at least I don't anyway. I sort of like to get up and move, but there's a lot of work that happens in a very stationary position. You're indoors. Most of the time you're out, you're not in direct sunlight and fresh air. And so, it's really vital also that people, who work in studios do things to try and, help with their health. And that includes, getting outside in the sun, taking a bit of a walk, drinking some water and hydrating. And, you don't have to necessarily go to the gym. You don't have to be on the mat rolling. You don't have to do anything extreme. But so long as you get some level of movement in your body. Yeah. Now, I know in the UK it's hard to get sun, but,
barely any. Especially
vitamin D, just making sure that you're up on your vitamin D. Yeah. And supplementing well and eating as cleanly as you can. I mean, I still have my blowout and enjoy things as well. So I'm not a food Nazi by any stretch of the imagination. And maintaining a reasonable balance. And so that's pretty much how I did it, mate. It was a long process. I had to have support. I had to, I used counseling and coaches and people to help me along the way, because you don't become 170 kilos overnight. You're not going to release it overnight. And so it's about shifting your identity. As one thing I tell people is you'll never achieve and maintain a fit body with a fat personality. Because there's a lot of people yo-yo up and down. They go through the process, they get rid of the weight, they look at themselves, oh, wow, this looks good, I look good in these jeans, I look whatever. But deep down subconsciously, they don't feel they're worthy of it.
No.
And so slowly but surely, and then people wonder, oh, no, I know what I'm doing. I know the right things to do, but I can't do it. I don't seem to do it, even though I know I should be doing the right things. They haven't developed the identity. And part of identity is developing habits. So it's like, well, if I'm going to be a fit person, how does a fit person think? Who are the people they hang out with? What are the habits they instill? What sort of food do they eat? What sort of training do they do? What is it that makes, people will look at you and know, you don't have to tell them who you are. People will just look at you and know, you know what I mean? Because you're living it. You're congruent in your actions. It's not just a matter of just saying, oh, here I am identifying a certain way. Yeah. So what am I doing to show the world and be consistent and congruent in this identity? What are my actions? What are they saying? More than anything else. And this thing takes time, mate. It takes time. Yeah. Habits take time.
So how long was it, the transition between you being at the doctor and him telling you you're going to die? And
about 18 months.
18 months, okay.
Yeah. Sort of to go from, and with health and vitality, so that, I don't have my kids or anyone else for that matter, having to clean up after me, when I'm older.
Yeah, so good. We had a chat with, you joined us very kindly with Piper Payne for International Women's Day a couple of weeks ago now. Time's going so quick. And Eve Louise Horn, or Eve Horn, should I say, who's one of our mods in our community, runs an incredible website, and is involved. Well, it's her thing, the Unheard, with the Unheard T-shirts. So Steve B had a T-shirt sent over to him. I know that Man and Grandjean had a T-shirt as well, and you got involved as well with Piper. It was so fantastic to hear you speak with Piper. And Piper, as many of us know, is a phenomenal mastering engineer who was an assistant, which I found out only a week ago, was assistant to Bob Katz as well. So it's amazing how many people in the music community are connected to one another, which I'm starting to find out. But yeah, so let's maybe go back a couple of weeks. What's your stance in supporting women in music, and what changes have you seen in recent years?
Well, obviously we have a severe disparity when it comes to women in the industry, particularly when we're talking about the more tech side of things, as far as engineers and producers are concerned. I don't really want to get too much into the whole gender thing, man, because but I'm not a believer in quotas, but I think that men, as Steve B said, we have a responsibility to be allies to women, to support them. But the one thing that I keep coming back to is this, and that is, as much as a man, I can sit here and say, ladies, you're welcome. We need you. We want you as part of our community. We accept you. We'll support you. That's all good and dandy, but nothing speaks louder to a young, aspiring girl than another woman who's kicking ass. And hence the reason why I try to get as many women on my podcast as possible, because my podcast, mate, is not about a tutorial. It's not about how to get the record loud or what setting do you use on the compressor. Yeah, we can delve into that, but it's about inspiring kids into getting into the industry. It's about people sharing their stories in the hope that some kid that sees it goes, wow, I came from the same town as that person or that girl, and I, wow, that speaks. So when a female talks about her journey to a young aspiring female, that speaks louder than anything else. So we need to support the women in our industry, to encourage them to be a voice, support them to be a voice. Okay. And I think it's more important that we even go back, and it's about the younger generation, man. It's about getting into the hearts and minds of young kids and especially young boys, into letting them know, look, we're allies here. We're here to support our sisters, and move through that way. Because if we're just trying to harp on people of my age or the Gen Ys and Gen Xs, in many respects, the horse is kind of bolted there. Yes, you can try and appeal to their sensibilities, but more important, it's about education, right? And getting back to where you can really be, you can really impress upon youngsters into a new way of thinking, right? Instill a new mindset, which then will bring a new influx into the industry. I think it's compared to when I started, there's certainly more, women involved, which is great to see. But again, if you believe the stats, where I watched this thing on YouTube with my wife the other day, and talking about why, I think it was called "Why Aren't There as Many Women Produced," or something like that. Rough wording. Yeah. Sure. And according to the research that they had done, if you believe that, they're saying that for every female producer out there who is full-time doing the gig and paying rent by doing we're not talking about the part-time, we're talking about you're full-time in it.
Full-time job. Yeah.
There's 98 men. We have, I think the world population, is 51% female, if I'm not mistaken. Well, they're slightly more. So I'm not saying there needs to be 51%. It's a nice ideal to have.
Yeah.
But 1 to 98 is not acceptable in my view. And I think that as fellas, we have our role to play, but our role is to, as I said, as Steve B says, and I really love the concept of to be their allies, and to encourage women today who are out there to support them and help them become a voice and be leaders and shining the light, and passing the baton to help bring more women into the community.
So good. So thanks for that, Tony. Let's have a chat as well. So I know that we're really wanting to have a chat about mental health and have a chat about ladies in the music industry and your life experiences, what you've been through. And we've not even touched on your discography. And your discography is phenomenal. It's fantastic. I love it. I've been diving through it over the last week or so, and over time that we've known each other. So one of your biggest successes that people know about is the Neighbourhood. So tell us the story behind that. How did that come about? And what was the conversation? How did it all start?
Oh, look, I think like with a lot of those records that did well, they were a lot of good fortune came my way. So the long and short of that one was the guy that produced that album I'd met when I was working at Sing Sing, the studio I was working from before I started my own place, Deluxe.
Yeah.
And we got along really, really well. And he said, "Look, I'm working with this new band. They're new, they're unknown, and their manager, Kirk. Shout out to Kirk Harding. Just he's a Kiwi as well, and said, look, basically I was given an opportunity because I think it was because they liked me, but also I think they had more scope. See, the thing about what happens over with major record companies is that they have the A&R have their relationships all set.
Yeah.
Once they sign a band, they go right. Often they'll have someone in mind, or the other thing that happens quite often is they'll do a shootout if it's someone new. They'll say, we'll send out the 5 engineers, and whichever one basically is the one that they prefer will get the gig. I think because at the time maybe Columbia didn't think that the band were going to do all that much. So I don't think they were really too concerned about using an unknown person, because typically what would happen is if you're new and you're trying to get a leg in with a major act, an A&R person is going to be very, very careful. Well, first of all, they're going to have the relationship. So it's very hard to bust up marriages that way.
Yeah.
But also if they, if an A&R person, they're trying to feather their nest. Okay, think about it. They don't want to take a punt with someone new, because if their bosses don't like it, then that A&R guy, he could be out the door. Whereas if they get someone like a Bob Ludwig and they don't necessarily like what Bob did, they go, well, don't blame me. It's fucking Bob Ludwig.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they're basically, feathering their nest and being very, very careful. So they're not going to take a risk. So I think that with the Neighbourhood, again, an unknown band, I don't think anyone expected they were going to, go double platinum. Yeah,
no.
which is 2 million sales, and the album went gold, which is 500,000. I don't think it was expected. So new producer, a whole lot of new people involved that were not on anyone's radar.
Yeah.
And so, and I guess I was fortunate that was the situation that it was, because if it was a better known band, I wouldn't have got a look in. I would not have got a look in. There's no way known that would have happened. And so, and that's how that came about. So there was, I got very lucky with that one. Very lucky indeed.
Absolutely. And I know we've had so good. I know we've had a chat about the 90s. You were known for what type of, tell people like what type of music you were known for in the 90s? I think
in the 90s, there was a lot of electronic music. Again, because I got my training through Rick Essig, I became really good at when it came to club music, electronic music, what the kids calling EDM these days.
Yeah.
What has been known as EDM. And so I kind of fell into this thing in Melbourne, particularly. I got to do a lot of work with a mob called MDS, which licensed a lot of singles and albums for, again, just club bangers, mate, club bangers. And so I'm just churning them out. And again, I was very lucky that a lot of these records became, club hits and known around the world. And so I was known as that guy. And then of course that thing passed, and then it took a little bit of time for me to reestablish myself, because I'd become typecast, and so everyone else was thinking, oh, isn't that the guy that does all the doof shit? Like, what does he know about guitars and drums? But it happens. It happens, and Australia, like America, isn't a big enough market where you could become a niche engineer. And look, America, you can afford to do that because the market's big enough, even though I'm sure that even those guys who are renowned as being a particular style of engineer can, adequately handle all kinds of genres. But again, people's perception is their reality, right? So unless you're lucky enough to have had a wide range of stuff that's done very well, on different charts and different genres, etc., but you're at the mercy of that too. Let's face it, records don't become hits because of the mastering guy. Not in the history of the world has that ever happened.
Right.
A song is a hit because it's a great fucking song, period. Right? Now, having a great mix and a great producer and is all good and dandy and can help embellish the experience of the great song to the end user.
Yeah.
But if you got the most technically crafted song that's boring, uninspiring, it doesn't matter whether Bob Ludwig mastered it and Chris Lordau's mixed it. If it's a song that doesn't appeal to you, if it doesn't tickle your giggle pin, if it doesn't make you feel something,
you're right.
No one's going to buy it on the strength of that.
Yeah.
Well, certainly, unless you're in that 0.0000% of boffins who buy records based on you're a fan of an engineer and you buy it, but there's not going to be enough sales in order for it to chart. You with me?
Yeah.
So yeah, mate. No record. There's no section in fucking Spotify or iTunes that says mastered by Jack the Bear. I can guarantee you that.
100%. You're so right. It's just like I was looking through your discography as well. So you've worked with one of my favorite bands, Silverchair. I know we've had a chat about Silverchair before. I know Steve B's done some work with them in the past. Steve B on the community, phenomenal band. Those kids, how old? They were 14, 15 when they first started.
Yeah, well, I think. They're 14, 15. So what I did, I got to do the vinyl of Across the Night and Tuner in the Brine. Okay, now I never got to meet now. One thing that's really interesting, people think sometimes when you work with a big band that you get, what were they like? And you tell them, well, I never really got to meet them. And people think, no. And quite often that's not the case, especially at mastering. I was listening to a podcast the other day with a guy called Stephen Thompson. Steve Thompson, hopefully I'll have him on my podcast soon. This guy's been involved with, George Michael, Aretha Franklin, the Rolling Stones, David Bowie. He mixed Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction.
Yeah.
His name's on like 350 million records sold around the world. And he was telling a story. And he was telling a story about the first. So he worked with Aretha Franklin and George Michael, that "Knew You Were Waiting" song, and worked on the album "Who's Zooming Who," which and he won a Grammy for that. He said, and the first time he met Aretha Franklin was actually at the Grammys. So,
No way.
So he worked on this record. She was in Detroit. He was in New York. They were doing their thing, bouncing back and forth with couriers as they did back in the day.
Yeah.
And the first time she actually met him, and he said he'll never forget it when she was being escorted at the Grammys with Clive Davis, A&R legend, and said, Aretha, this is Steve. And apparently he said the look on her face was like, I can't believe you're not black.
No way.
Because of his sensibility in the way he worked, he was able to bring so much soul into the record. He just, for whatever reason, had no idea that this guy was an Italian American dude.
No way. That's so.
Red eyes, and it was just like, what?
That's crazy. That's absolutely mad. But you're so right though as well though, because when I was talking with Mayor, when I was talking with Steve B, with Manon and Tim, looking through their discographies as well as yours, you realise that so many fucking engineers, maybe even on one track, that are involved. You kind of think, oh, there's just like maybe just one assistant or there's just one mixer, but then you go, oh no, wait a sec, actually there's maybe 15 people involved with one track. So as you said, and especially these days when you're getting, I don't know, however you receive it, like Dropbox or WeTransfer or whatever, you're getting to know the people maybe over, email, I'm guessing, like when people send through your work, because you're based out in Australia, but I'm guessing you've got clients all over the shop.
Yeah, and sometimes the artist isn't even directly involved. There'll be record company or A&R or management, or there'll be someone else usually in the way. And this brings you to another point, which is, again, it's interesting. People, the public will ask, what was so-and-so like? And when you tell them, they think you're being aloof. But the reality is, quite often you don't get to meet. But it's not even about that. I think, I'm sure that Tim and Steve B and Manon and anyone else out there would agree with me, and that is, we don't get in this business because we want to meet rock stars. No. We don't get in this business because we want to be seen as so-and-so and so-and-so. We're in this business because we love what we do and we're passionate about it. Man. And the fact that we're lucky enough to get a Guernsey on a team of a record, of a high-profile artist or a hit, that's a wonderful bonus. That's a wonderful embellishment, and that's something that usually will, as I said, will happen because of many ducks lining up. If we were to, if I went into, seriously, mate, if I went into my career with the sole purpose and intention of wanting to make hit records and work with superstars, I would have bailed out years ago, because my discography compared to other people out there, it's nothing. It's absolutely, it doesn't stand up. It holds no water. In fact, it's not even, there's no point me trying to put up my discography against someone like Tim Palmer. Okay, let's not even go there. Yeah. But that's not what it's about. In my view, that's not the satisfaction is. That's so true. The fact that I'm doing something that I love so much and I enjoy so much was, 5% of the population only actually get to do what they love to do, mate. I don't think about, on Sunday night, I don't peak like a bitch on heat because I'm thinking it's Monday tomorrow. And I don't wait for Friday to come around waiting for fucking beer o'clock because I want to get the fuck out of my studio. Yeah. That's not living, mate. That's existing, and that's what most people do. So why do I give a fuck about whether I'm working with the Neighbourhood or fucking Captain fucking the sniggling shits and down the road?
Yeah, okay? You're right. It's so right.
Because at the end of the day, mate, you know what? The money they drop in your till has the same fucking buying power. I've never been to a store with a $20 bill and have the cashier go, "Excuse me, sir, but you know what? You're not going to be able to buy as much with this $20 because you only work with an independent band. But if you'd work with a big band, you could probably buy more with this." It's not how it works, mate. No. Right? Absolutely. Earning is earning. Earning is earning. And it's about process and journey. Cliches it all is, mate. Yeah. It's about loving what you do. Loving what you do. Being involved in a process and doing, and that's what success is, kids. It's not about the gold records. These things are really nice to have, and there's no reason why you shouldn't aspire towards these things. But success, in my view, is the fact that you're in it and you're doing it, because most people wouldn't even try. People will sit and look at you, even though you think you're not succeeding, and look at you and say, shit, I wish I could do that. I'd love to be able to do that, or at least try to do that. So, getting involved and getting in the process and getting in the game and swinging the bat, that's what it's about. Because most people don't have the gumption to even pick up the bat in the first place.
But it's so much fun. Like you said, though, you're, so good of you to say that. And as you said, you're part of the 5% that get to do what they love every day of the week. The fact that you're not, like you said, you're not having to worry about a boss breathing down your neck, or obviously you've got time scales to hit with clients.
Every client is in essence but it's not the kind of boss that's going to sit there and tell you, I'm sorry, you can't go for a piss because you've got to wait 1 minute before you can take a break.
Yeah.
1 in a million will probably be a bit difficult, a bit challenging, but they're still your bosses, and you still need to respect them, and you still need to serve them. You still need to serve them and bring value to them. Okay, so there's still that relationship that needs to be respected, right? And you need to deliver and bring the goods to these people each and every time without fail.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for that, Tony. So let's talk about, so when you're getting the music coming through to you, which you've built a lovely studio over in Melbourne, and Deluxe Mastering, am I right in saying that?
Yep, that's right. Yep.
Deluxe Mastering, yeah. And I've seen the gear that you've got in there. So I know that, as you said, you're very much an engineer that feels the music, and you're not looking at meters. And well, so you are looking at meters, but you're not.
I'm not focused entirely on them. I don't make all of my critical decisions based on them, and just focus entirely on metering. No. You're right.
Absolutely. So, but then you've talked to me as well about, for anyone that's interested in mastering, which, a lot of people deem as the dark art still. And I know that, yeah, completely, man, completely. And however, what I've found over the last couple of years, learning about mastering and learning from you and looking up stuff that Bob Katz has done, and many other mastering engineers, is what fascinates me is color. And I know that's something that you're really into as well, and about how you can experiment with color. And I've talked to other engineers about this over the past few weeks that we've had interviews with, that no human being has got the same pair of ears. Everyone hears music differently. So when you start to realize that, all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, let's, talk about, your favorite type of music, and maybe that could then influence, or have you tried this EQ or this compressor? And it's about experimentation. So talk to us about color and how you approach color.
Well, Vlado Mella gave me a beautiful piece of advice that I'll pass on to anyone open to it. And that is, he said, let the song speak to you. So think about all your tools in your rack as a palette of different colors, your primary colors that you can mix and create other little colors. And when you listen to a song, you're going to feel what it needs, and it'll tell you. And so you'll know, okay, well, I maybe need more of this or less of that in order to help bring the vision. Because as a mastering engineer, the way I define the role is, I'm somebody that facilitates a process to help an artist or band help realize their vision for their art, right? Not mine. Subjective as it all is, I've got to be able to sort of listen and go, where's the promised land? Where's the gap between the start point and where it needs to go? Sure, sometimes people will give you a brief and give you some input, which is great because that helps. But I think a good engineer shouldn't have to have their hand held. You got to be able to get it. You just got to be able to get it and know, right, I know where they want to go with this thing. And so when you have an understanding of your room, your monitoring, and your tools, then you're going to know. Because it's as much as I would describe myself as more of a heavy-handed engineer. I'm not, for example, Adam Dempsey, who works alongside me, he's more known as a more transparent, more polite in the way he approaches things.
Linear, is that the right word?
Huh?
Linear? So
yeah. I guess that's another way of being able to put it. And he's more, again, like Bob is more minimalist approach to doing, and techie as well for that.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm just about, I'm fairly, I'd say probably heavy-handed at times. And while it's about respecting the mix and all that, but sometimes it's about imposing your will on it too. And sometimes you need to pull it into line, and you may need to do some fairly drastic moves. And drastic for me, I'm not talking about 8 dB, 50 hertz, for me, if I need any more than 2 dB, for me is approaching dangerous territory, right? That to me is, and usually before I take on any job, mate, I always go through my due diligence process, which is to listen to the mix and see how it sits, and help my client get their mix to what I call an optimal state.
Sure.
Right? And that state is a state where I can listen to something and go, okay, can I work on this track to a point where I can deliver value? Will my client listen to this on the system that they know and go, wow, that's good. I'm really happy with that. I could have gone elsewhere and paid less money, but I'm glad I invested the extra 20, 30, 40 quid and I got what I wanted, right? And that's not a fine line of like that's pretty clear. Okay. So therefore that ensures me against having to be overly heavy-handed. Okay. So again, you know, you got left channel, right channel, you're at the mercy of what you got. Right? I know what my limitations are. So I want to make sure that my starting point will allow me to take, again, not necessarily, sometimes it's very minimalist, but, you know, I want to be able to change things enough to create an appreciable change, but not so much that the engineer goes back and they go, what the fuck happened to my drums? What happened to my vocal?
Yeah.
What happened to my guitar tone? What happened to my mix? This is not how I remember it. You know, I want them to take it and play it on their system that they know and go, this is how I remember when it left, but gee, it sounds better now. That, you know, so getting back, my approach to color is it always depends. It'll always depend job to job, gig to gig. I like color. I tend to be more, as I said, I tend to be more colored and more heavy-handed in my approach to what I do. But by the same token, I also want to make sure that I don't get too carried away. And in order for me not to get too carried away, is we're going to go through this due diligence process of listening to the mix, communicating with the client, and making sure that so long as they're open to the constructive input and I explain myself as to why I'm offering the suggestions, we can start at a good point, which allow me to frame the picture and not repaint it.
That's such a good line. I remember Mayor Applebaum saying something similar to me about that, about framing the picture. That is such a good line. I really, really like that. So if you're quite happy to wrap up, so in a few minutes, where's your journey going next? So we've had a chat about the mastering stuff that you've done over the years, started off in the 80s. And I know that you were in Toronto, is that right?
I spent some time there as well. Yeah, that was good fun. Love Toronto, fucking cold place though. New York was fucking cold too, man. Where you are, you I think you're on a similar kind of latitude, so I don't think you go over there and you'd probably roll around like Wim Hof in the snow naked. You wouldn't give a shit, right?
Pretty much. Well, to be fair, I've actually seen an interview with you. I think you were in Scotland. Is that right? It's like an interview with you on YouTube.
Edinburgh.
Such a gorgeous city.
It is beautiful.
How long were you there for?
Couple of days.
Oh yeah.
Couple of days.
I tell you what, if you get a chance to go again, go to Hogmanay. I was obviously like post-lockdown, but I remember going with my other half. We went to Hogmanay on New Year's Eve. Man, it was fucking crazy. Midnight hit, and people literally swinging off lampposts. They were just like, you know, climbing all over the streets. It was just going absolutely crazy. And I tell you what, you wake up 9 o'clock in the morning, next day, everything was super clean and tidy. It was phenomenal. I don't know how the hell they did it, but it was phenomenal.
I'll tell you, one thing that really spun me out in Edinburgh was I met someone who was Asian. I don't know exactly what part of Asia, but they were Asian, and they had a Scottish accent. It was the funniest fucking thing, mate, to see an Asian guy with a thick Scottish accent. It just cool. It spun me the fuck out. And I also learned the hard way in Scotland that so I'm not a drinker. People don't believe it as an Aussie that I'm not a drinker. But I learned not so much the hard way, but I did learn that in Scotland, never knock back a guy that offers you a drink. I remember being in a pub and this guy was saying, "Hey, Jimmy," and of course, "Oh, thanks, mate. I don't drink." And anyway, he gave me this weird look, and we were getting on really well, and then he just went really weird on me. And then anyway, this bloke who could understand there was a cultural, difference here going on. He went after me and said, "Hey, Jimmy, in Scotland, when a man gives you a drink, you fucking take it, right? Take it away if you don't see it. It's like an insult, man. It's like a slap in the face, the wet fish."
It's true.
Right? So I for the rifle to go back. "Sorry, mate. Thanks very much. Had it. kind of, and when and in fact, when he was out of sight, I just tipped it out, but he was all happy then, you know what I mean? So it's funny how in different countries, different places, there's the different cultural norms, and how you know, how you inadvertently, not realizing that through something quite innocuous, you can create a little bit of, you know, disruption in the place. But thankfully, this guy came along, could see what was going on, explained the situation. We managed to remedy it. We averted World War III, and the universe is now at balance again.
So try going to, I don't know if you've ever been to Newcastle in the UK, but their accent's really thick. Yeah, Geordies, man. It's just their accent's so thick. I actually once got into a bus in Newcastle as I was visiting a friend over at uni many years ago, and I literally could not understand. Bearing in mind, I only live like 100 odd miles away. Couldn't understand a word that guy was saying to me.
Yeah,
it was absolutely hilarious.
Yeah.
But
the Geordies, they know how to drink, they know how to party, don't they?
They do big time.
They're one thing I find interesting about England is that it's almost like a barometer. It seems like the colder the climate, the warmer and friendlier people are. Like people from Yorkshire, it's just a completely different breed to people in London, and that's no disrespect to Londoners, but it's just again, you know, like through the Midlands, people, it just almost seems like they get friendlier and friendlier and friendlier, and then you get up north, and then you get up to Scotland and Ireland, and you know, and that's again, you know, just the next level of warmth and friendliness and hospitality, and just, you know, just beautiful people. Yeah.
You're so right. So I'm from Robin Hood country, from Nottingham originally. So then I moved up to Manchester, and you're so right that I noticed that cultural shift, that all of a sudden I was talking to someone, and then like 20 minutes go by. This is, bearing in mind, a stranger. They'll tell me their life story. You know, it's just like you're saying, it's great. It's great to hang out with these people. So yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Tony. So with what you're doing next, so I know that obviously you'll be doing mastering, and you know, so what's
okay, let me. So at this, well, I don't know what I'm doing from minute to minute, because you know I could be hit by a bus tomorrow. No, but all shit aside, I want to still master records because I love doing them. Right now, I want to train some successors to, you know, to take over, and for me, I want to be able to do more work in the mentoring space.
Yeah.
I'm, you know, my wife and I were talking the other day about looking towards setting up a place outside of Melbourne by the sea, a place called Torquay.
Wow. Yeah,
beautiful part of the world, to set up workshops for artists where they we're writing workshops and some mentoring, sort of band boot camp type of stuff, you know, bonding, to create sort of like, you know, bonding experiences for bands to do things. And you know, to work on things like mindfulness and mindset, and you know, help bands bond together, and that sort of stuff, you know, as well as helping kids with their self-esteem, with career guidance, offering them that kind of thing. So you know, if I'm lucky enough and to be healthy enough and sane enough, you know, as I move forward into my 60s and 70s, that's something I can still do and still add value to. You know, will I still be mastering records at 70, 75? I think it's highly unlikely. Maybe I can see myself doing something as charity work, you know, doing stuff for kids and helping people out. Yeah. That's something that's very appealing to me, because I'm a great believer in it's the laws of nature, mate. It operates on two principles, which is growth and contribution. You know, once an apple stops giving fruit, it's going to wither away, die, become fertilizer to make way for the next tree. Okay, in nature, you know, animals don't die of old age. Eventually, they're going to become someone's lunch, or they, you know, or they just, you know, they'll be diseased or something like that. But typically, what happens is once they stop contributing to the ecosystem, they get taken out.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not all that different for us humans as well. So, and this is why it's important that, you know, we need a purpose to get out of bed. We need a reason to be around. We need to be constantly looking at how can I contribute? Because the more I give, the more I grow, the better person I become, which then allows me to give even more. And so the cycle continues, you know, until such time as, you know, I don't have any more relevance of being around, and it's time for me to move over to the next dimension, you know. So that's where I see myself moving forward into. I still like to see the studio still operating. As I said, find a couple of successes to come in, because it's their turn now, Rich. It's their turn. I've had more than a good fucking run. I don't need to be the man. I don't need to be seen as anything. I've got nothing to prove to anyone anymore. I've had a wonderful career. It's given me a lifestyle. You know, again, I really feel like I've lived a charmed life with what it's given me. And so now it's time to have, you know, help support and create the space for some other kids in the same way I've had a go. Let's let someone else have a chance to go in there and find other ways of how I can bring value and how I can, you know, serve others, you know, moving forward as an older fellow. So that's where I see, and, you know, and still doing the podcast. It's not setting the world on fire, but again, my podcast is a self-indulgent exercise, and it's more about, you know, I'm not necessarily one who wants to do it each and every week. I'm thinking, you know, I just want to sort of take my time, think, and be considered as to the guests I have on. Again, because I want to feel like I'm putting stuff that's of value into the world, rather than just lot and quality, rather than just quantity and just filling up the space for the sake of filling up the space. You know, so what? You got 400 episodes there to look at. Who's got time to look at 400 episodes?
You're right.
So that's where I'm at, and that's where I'm heading towards. And again, life being what it is a non-linear experience. You never know what's around the corner. Who knows, mate? Something else may come along that is completely unexpected, but I'll play the cards as they're dealt to me.
So good. And your podcast, as I've told you before, was one of the things that influenced this journey with Produce, Mix, Fix and Conquer right at the beginning. So it's wonderful getting you on, Tony. Wonderful that I can now call you a friend and a coach as well, and get to know you over the last few weeks. It's been absolutely fantastic, and I'm very honoured and thankful for your time today.
Thank you, mate. It's a pleasure.
It's been so good. Before we carry on, just got a couple of questions that we've had through, and if you don't mind, maybe over the next day or so, if people have got some questions on the community to send through to you, if that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
As well, because I know that we're working on pretty much every time zone known to man with this community, as you are as well, you know. So last thing before we go into the Q&A section, looking after your ears. So what advice have you got for people looking after their ears? Been a mastering engineer, it's so important, but been in working in any form of music, it's important. What's your approach?
Well, I remember years ago as a youngster, I was a guy that used to get laughed at in a club because I used to wear earplugs. And it's interesting how I come across so many kids these days, 25, 26, who have tinnitus. Who, you know, I can't stress this enough. Look after your ears, kids. Look after your ears. Get really good. You know, if you are a live musician, make sure you get really good quality earplugs with decent amount of padding in them. Everyone's listening out to earbuds. I just never got my head around them. But for one thing, they kept falling out of my ears, which probably was a blessing. But again, it's you don't realise how much SPL hits your eardrum with little earbuds or headphones or anything. So just be mindful of the level that you listen to. Yeah, it's always fun to want to crank it up, and it gets your adrenaline going. And you know, whether it's in the studio and headphones, I tend to monitor loud as well, but I just do it in very short bursts, very short bursts. You know, you don't necessarily have to adopt the 84 dB, and again, don't get. I don't get too anxious about having an SPL level meter and making sure that I'm at this. If it works for you, that's fantastic. But again, don't monitor for too loud for too long. Make sure you always wear earplugs when you go out to a gig. You know, if you're in a situation and you can't hear yourself speak, or you can't carry a decent conversation, and you've got a struggle, that's when you need to put. Even if you just have to speak a little louder than you normally would, put the fucking earplugs in. You know, it's the best investment, because once your hearing is fucked, it's fucked, right? There's no turning back. Yeah. So So I guess I was very fortunate that I managed to instill that, and it was instilled into me by, again, my mentors. They don't worry about how you look, just don't give a care. Just, you need these are your livelihood right here. It's like, an artist in their hands, a singer in their voice. You got to think of yourself. Mandy Parnell, bless her, once talked about looking after the way we need to approach taking care of our ears in the same way as an athlete takes care of their body. They need them, their legs if they're runners, they need their arms if they're lifting weights. So we got to think of it in, we got to think professionally in those terms. Like our livelihood, comes down to our ears. So, don't stick big things in your ears. If you need to get your ears cleaned out, go to see an ear, nose and throat person, an audiologist, someone that's qualified to be able. From what I understand, for the most part, look, you can't really fuck with Mother Nature unless you've got cigarette butts plugged in your ear, or half a boulder in there. Even whatever's built up in the ear is meant to be there.
You're right. Yeah.
So so to go in there and with fucking candles, or creating some fucking tsunami with a syringe, where you completely strip your ear of, there's a certain amount of wax that needs to be there. It needs to be there as part of natural, protection, against pollen and dust and other shit that's going on. So, but do an annual check of the ears. As Hulk Hogan said, say your prayers and eat your vitamins. And I'm just kidding. Yeah.
It's true.
but just common sense stuff, mate. Just common sense.
Yeah, completely. So good. Thanks so much for that, Tony. Great. Okay, so we've just got a couple of questions, or a couple of comments that have been sent through. So it's going to say hello to people. So thanks again to James Adams for modding today, who's part of our community. James is a fantastic guitarist and lovely person. So everyone feel free to say hi to James.
Hi, James. Nice talking to you before. Hit me up if you ever need me, son. I'll be always happy to listen.
He's fantastic guy. Thanks for that, Tony. And so we've got Mr. Zanin. So what's the definition of a bad mix for Tony? That's an interesting one. What's the definition of a bad mix for you?
Bad mix is a mix where when I hear it, and if I feel like, okay, there's nothing here that I can do that's going to make my client feel they're getting bang for the buck.
Yeah,
it's as simple as that. Yeah, if I can't work on it to that degree where it's going to stand up, it's not about pleasing everyone, because I'm sure even people at the upper end of the scale produce stuff and people just don't like it because subjectively they don't like it. But I think there's a universal, my warm could be your muddy, my crispy could be your tinny and abrasive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. But there's going to be a certain line of fidelity that you and I, even though we have differences in how we hear things and perceive things, will look at each other and go, ooh, that's not quite right, is it? Yeah. So that's the line I'm trying to avoid. And usually that's a very clear line. So, but I think the other thing too is sometimes I may hear things in the mix, for example, where there might be some interesting panning decisions. So I'm very careful when I flag things with clients, because sometimes there can be some certain method in the madness in what's being done. So again, you got to approach these things cautiously, and respectfully. But I think there is that line that you hear things and you just go, okay, we're definitely in that territory now where we need to have a chat. And that's what I would define as bad.
Gotcha.
I hope that adequately answers that question.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Tony. Appreciate that. And great question as well from Mr. Zanin. Okay, so Adam Ridland. So does Tony use a lot of automation? Asks Adam.
Automation and plugins? No, not really. I tend to be someone who likes to have a fixed. Once once I've set things in place, it's set in place. Now, on the odd occasion, I have been known to perhaps do a little volume automation on. There might be certain dynamic sections of a track, for example, where I may there may be a breakdown in the track, and then when it comes back in, maybe either whether it's to lower the breakdown section or just try and pump up the next bit when it comes in for impact and for dynamic shift. But again, if we're going back to what I said about my due diligence process, when I listen to a track and I just kind of, what I tend to do is I do a kind of rough setting that I put things through, and I just do it real quick, and I think about how's this behaving, and if it's a situation where it's like, oh, okay, this is going to need a fair bit of automation, that's a conversation I'm going to have beforehand with the client, so that when it comes to me, as I said, framing the picture, not repainting it. The old idiom of less is more really rings true when it comes to mastering. And that doesn't mean, working with the client to the point where I have to do virtually nothing. But again, it's not where I need to impose myself so much and do so much stuff that ideally should be done in, it's like with width. You wrote you put a question up in your forum the other day about, how do you address issues of width? Now, my answer here is not saying this is the correct answer, but my approach is, let the mix be done in the mix stage, because at mastering, what will happen is the way MS mastering happens is that you're putting it through a matrix and you're starting to manipulate the phase. Now, where's most of the power of the music? It's down the guts, down the center. That's where the power and the loudness, for that matter, will come, mainly from the stuff that's coming straight up the guts in the middle. So if you're going to start manipulating things to create this artificial width, guess what? It's going to lose its impact. Now, there are people out there that will say, bullshit, I can achieve that in MS, and maybe they can, and God bless them. I'm delighted for them. But for me, I would say get your width in the mix stage, get all that stuff done there, and then let the mastering enhance that. And mastering will, through good converters and some EQs can help bring a little bit more of that to it, but it doesn't do it by manipulating the phase. You with me?
Yeah, so completely.
You want to preserve the mix as much as you can, and allow the process to enhance and bring out more of what's in there in the first place.
I remember you saying to me as well about quality control. So when you're getting the mixes through from clients, like you said before to me, that I think you said this to me a couple of weeks ago, that if a client sends you through a song and the mix isn't right, rather you going, oh yeah, I'll master it for you, you go and said, no, that's not right. I'll send it back to them, and just say, have you thought about doing this? Because I've heard Mandy Pinnell say this as well, that it's about, quality control and critical listening, making sure that you're at the mastering stage doing the critical listening and sending it back if it's not right, and then doing your job afterwards. So it's so important, isn't it, to make sure.
No, absolutely. Right. Look, again, before I mentioned about engaging clients, and before you start giving prices, find out more about the client. Is also to have a listen to their mix and see how you can add value by providing that kind of input. Because again, a lot of what my feedback has been from people, what typically happens is an inquiry goes in, they just send out a price sheet. That's it. Or they'll just take the job. Look, you can take virtually anything and you can make some difference. You can change it enough to go, wow, okay, now it's louder and brighter and whatever. But something that's shit is just going to be more shit. It's just louder shit and brighter shit. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So why would you do that to a client? But it happens because people go, well, I've done something. Yes, you've made a difference. Of course, you made a difference. But is it a difference that's going to make someone feel like, again, you've got to put yourself in your shoes and go, if I was to pay money for that, would I feel like I'm getting a bang for the buck, or the euro or the pound or whatever currency you're dealing in, or Bitcoin, and if you can, and if you're honest with yourself about it and you realize that, no, it's not, then, it's good business ethics, mate, and sometimes it's okay to be able to say, and if it's something that's out of your wheelhouse, it's okay to say no to something. If you can't do it, if you can't sort it out, or whatever reason, maybe you need to refer it to someone else. I mean, it's so important to work with good ethics, mate, because in the world of the internet, good news travels around, but bad news travels even faster. And not only does it travel a lot faster, for the most part, it's also embellished because people love a good story. Chinese whispers, So, what started life as I delivered a master 24 hours later than I promised turns into I'm a psychopathic killer. You know what I mean? Because, again, people like to embellish things and tell it, spin a good yarn, right?
Yeah.
So you got to be mindful of that. So it's so important that you engage in good ethics from the get-go.
Yeah.
Be known for being someone that works ethically, and respectfully. Yeah.
Yeah, completely, and approach people with love and, like as you said, with respect, because at the end of the day, reputation, as you say, reputation is everything. Without reputation,
the funny thing
we're
about,
fucked, isn't it?
Well, what's more important? Well, it is, but more importantly, what's more important is character.
Yeah.
Because character is who you are, and reputation is what people think you are.
That's right? Good. I like that. Okay.
Now, some people may think that you're an arsehole, but you must still be of good character, but they just don't like you for whatever reason. Okay. Yeah. So what the ideal is that you want to have a character and a reputation that match. How many times now you've experienced this yourself? You met people you haven't known, you've only known them by reputation, and you meet them and you go, wow, that guy was really fucking nice. He was a real cool motherfucker. Yeah. Now that's what you want, and that's the ideal, right?
Yeah.
So your perception is out of your hands. You don't have control as to what people think about you. You're only in control of how you operate in the world, right? So you operate well, you operate ethically, you operate respectfully. Yeah. You're in control of what? The work that you do, the way you go about your business, the way you treat people, okay? And you're not going to please people 100% of the time. That's you'll never win that game. But if you can be consistent enough, right, and let others beat the drum for you, then you can create that so-called reputation. But so long as you work on your character, okay, of being a good person, and then when people come back to you and they come to see you through word of mouth, and then so they already have a certain perception of you, and then if your character then matches to that,
yeah,
that's what you want. In fact, you want to exceed that if you can. Yeah.
Yes.
Ideally, you want to operate in a world where people may think a certain way, but your character blows them away even more than what they think of you. Okay.
So good. Love that.
Yeah.
That's really, thanks so much for that, Tony. Really appreciate that, man. Right. Okay. So what else we got? So also from Martin Anderson. Martin's from Sweden. I've got to know Martin over the last few weeks. He's a really, really good guy. He does some fantastic mix work over in Sweden. And he says, I recognize myself so much in what Tony says. Inspiring to say the least. Thanks for that, Martin. It's because like you said, Tony, it's like, it's so good what Martin just said, that, how you put yourself out there and how you put yourself out there today. You're telling your story. You don't have to tell your story. You don't have to say these things, but it's the fact that you are sharing to help everybody, that in itself just speaks volumes. It's just so good, and I really appreciate it. But I know that, no worries, man, but I know that, whoever hears this or watches this, this, like you said, this is now on the internet. It's now recorded. It's going to go out and people are going to see it. There might be a few people watching this right now, but who are we to tell, who are we to judge that if this goes out to 100 people or 1,000 people? But if just 1 or 2 people are impacted by the conversation and it encourages them, like it has with Martin, it's great. It's fantastic.
No, I agree. And I feel as it's, again, I don't claim to be perfect, and that, I've done my fair share of fuck ups and done plenty in my life that I could say are regrettable. But I feel as someone who is trying to serve others, it's incumbent upon me to be authentic. And part of that means it needs to be a warts and all approach, because as you've heard me say this many a time to you, my friend, you can't bullshit a bullshitter.
No.
All right.
About a million years.
And kids today especially have the most sensitively tuned bullshit meters on the planet, and they can, before you pretty much open your mouth, your energy, you walk into a room and kids know before you even open your mouth, just by the way you carry yourselves. But online, people, just because you're not in the physical form, you're there as ones and zeros and pixels, but people still feel it, man. They know what they're dealing with when they're listening to what you're saying, right? Yeah, they can close their eyes and they know. They don't have to even look at you. They just have to listen and tune into you to realize whether, and why is it so many of us, we look at Instagram influencers and we all can see the bullshit. Yeah. We see it. It's plain as fucking day. So if you know that you're that exposed, why would you bother? Why would you bother? So I feel it's important that and I think it also means the transparency and the warts and all approach and laying it all out, because chances are if I feel something, other people have felt it too. So there's no point trying to build a narrative that is unrealistic and, more importantly, is just, dare I say, even fabricated and complete utter bullshit, because you're going to get found out. You won't last very long. And as I said, bad news around the internet, it travels real fucking fast, and then, and you're fucked. So, so I appreciate what you just said there, my friend. And, it really is an honor to be able to do this, because, as I said, I'm a guy who is a great believer in legacy, and legacy to me isn't, having a statue or in your name or building a fucking hospital wing. Those things will crumble and turn to dust, but it's to be remembered for the way you live your life,
Yes. And legacy, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, and part of that is, being able to tell the whole story, warts and all, unashamedly, because that's what's going to inspire people, man. I don't care so much about the person that's made $1 million, but I care more about the guy that made the million, lost the million, and then fucking made it again. Yeah, that's the guy.
Yes, that's good. Love that. So good. Yeah.
Not the guy that's been married. Not the guy that's been married for. It's great. We've been married for 50 years with a childhood sweetheart. Great, but I want to talk about the guy that was married, got divorced, fucked it up, and then managed to find another wife and changed his life and turned it around. Go, wow, what did you do to be able to go from to lose everything and then rebuild it? That's the guy I want to talk to. That's the guy I'm going to listen to, more so than I've been married for 50 years. You know what I mean? Or I've made $1 million and I've stayed rich all my life.
Yeah, so good. Love that. So thanks for that, Tony. That's super inspiring. Okay, so last bit. So we've got John Neves. Hey, John, I think John's new to the community. Just saying this is pure gold. And so thanks again, Tony, for all the stuff that you're sharing today, man. And we've got our good friend Brian Cook. Hey, Brian. Good to see you. Brian is saying lots of brave words, Tony. Way to go, man. So you've got Brian completely backing up what you're saying here, Tony, as well. So,
thank you.
Brian, we're actually... Brian has joined the community, I think a couple of months ago now, but he's been watching these interviews and some of his work, man. Check it out. It's phenomenal. It's so good. Just do it. So it's brilliant. But Tony, thank you so much for your time today. Any last words to leave us with before you go?
Or before my last words, I'll just say to you, mate, and I'm not going to piss in your pocket because I need a new best friend. I've got plenty of them. Yeah. But first of all, congratulations on what you've created here in this community, mate, because it all seems to have happened overnight. But I know this is something that you've probably been working on for a longer period of time. But congratulations for getting off your ass and getting it done. And you've attracted some amazing people here. And again, know that the people that are getting on board aren't with you, because I know that you said yourself, or sometimes I feel like not the imposter syndrome, but you sort of like you pinch yourself. Well, you've created this, and people get on board because they see where you're coming from, and they obviously believe in your vision and the way you conduct yourself and carry yourself, and that's why you're attracting good people. So congratulations on that. I wish you continued success. I'm proud of you, and I'm proud of what you're doing, and I'm always happy to mentor and help people that help themselves, because working with you is a breeze because you do the work. They say that people get elevated to greatness. You can't drag people up. And so I think if you continue on your path and maintain, again, good ethics and good intention, and make sure that, again, you come from that ethnocentric place as opposed to egocentric, which is, you're doing something for community, for contribution, for growth, for the industry, for people, then you will grow. It's just the laws of nature, mate. It's like gravity. You can't beat it. Okay. Yeah. And if you don't believe me, maybe tomorrow morning, go jump off a 10-story window and see if gravity says, "Fuck this, I'm taking a sick day today." It's not going to happen, right? Yeah. That's why, you can break rules, you can't break fucking laws, mate. Okay.
You're right. So right.
So well done, my friend. And it's been a real pleasure to be talking to you. And look, I guess my only closing comments on people to others is, for anyone out there that is thinking that they want to get involved in, whether it's a studio of their own, or in mastering, or as a recording artist, or as anything that excites you and lights you up, is that you need to, first of all, go for it yourself. You're the one that's getting in the way of you, not anyone else. It's all good to say, well, you don't understand. You didn't have a father like me, or, I was brought up in the projects, or yes, we all have a story. But we got to, first of all, get off the story, whether if we're thinking about we're victims to circumstance and to life. First of all, we need to just stop that. Now, some of you probably have had horrific starts in life, and I'm sorry to hear that. But the majority of us, there's nothing that's happened to us is so fucking bad. I was abused as a child from 7 to 11 as well. So I've got stories to go for fucking days. But again, we have to let whatever's happened to us not define us, but refine us.
Yeah.
Okay. And then once we get off our story, and then we start taking some personal responsibility for our life, and go, listen, I am worthy of this, and this is where the self-esteem comes in. And if you need to get as I did, many years of counselling around it and coaching, is if you need to get some work on our kids, go get some work on yourselves. Once your self-esteem is healthy, all right, then the world will shift and things will come your way with more ease. So get on that and just chase it, and understand that success is not an end point. It's not about awards, gold records, as all good as that is. It's about doing what you love. Just finding your passion and doing what you love. Get yourself a good peer group. You're on the internet now. It doesn't matter whether you're in some remote village somewhere on the planet. You can get online, find like-minded people, because you are as Jim Rohn said, you are the product of the 5 people that you hang around with most, the people that are within your orbit most of the time. Find people that will hold you accountable. Find people that will have your back, support you, love you, encourage you, but also call you out on your bullshit as well. Very important. You have people that will sort of pull you up. So get yourself a good peer group, and just enjoy the process, just a little bit every day, and don't take it as either or. You can still be holding down a job and holding down a creative artistic pursuit at the same time. You don't necessarily have to be full-time there to say that I'm successful. The fact that you even try is enough. And again, you do something enough. Repetition is the mother of skill. You do something enough times, eventually you'll get good at it. Someone's gonna toot your horn. People will come. Trust me. It's a long game. It's a marathon. It's the scenic route. And if you just stick to those things, you'll be happy and you'll be successful.
Love that.
That's my parting words, mate.
That is so good. And thanks for that today. Oh, thanks for your parting words. However, we've just had very quickly Leela from the community, another lady that's joined us quick before you go, Tony. Must have been a couple of months ago now. But Leela said, love Tony's approach. Authenticity is key. It's true, not only to being happy, but for success in art, business, and life in general. I can relate massively to his words and overcoming things, gaining wisdom and using that to rise up like an ever better version of ourselves. Phoenix rising, etc. It's character building and creates the truth within is that we then need to share by serving others. Credit to him. He's real, honest, and I love that. There you go, man.
Okay, beautiful. Appreciate that. Thank you.
So good. Thanks for your time, Mr. Mantz. You're an absolute legend, and it's lovely, as always, to chat to you. And, we'll see you soon.
You got it, man. All right. Peace out, everyone.
Take care, Tony.